We're in the series, When God Seems Absent. So what do you do when you feel like you pray, but God's not there? Or at least that you can't hear God, or you're just unsure about the whole thing. And the story that we're telling as we're going through this, we did part 1 last week. Kelly preached it, did a wonderful job. Part 2 today, 3 and 4 moving forward. But as we tell this story, we're kind of looking at it from the lens of asking that question, where's God? Because, as Kelly talked about, God shows up nowhere in the book of Esther. Like, not on a single page. It's not even a nod, not even a wink. God is not mentioned in the book of Esther. So what do you do when it seems like you can't find God's work in your life? To catch us up a little bit, remind us of last week, we start with this woman named Esther. She's young and she is good looking. Everybody knows it. Even she knows it. And so you got this guy named Xerxes there in Persia. Xerxes wants his wife, whose name is Vashti, to do stuff, to like jump and dance and be his little puppet. And she says, no, thank you. That's not how I will be spoken to. Good for her on one hand, bad for her on continuing to be the queen. So he gets rid of her. He's like, well, fine. If you're not going to be my little puppet here, then I'm going to go find somebody else. So they have the competition, and they look around for the prettiest women in all the land. And Esther, of course, is the cream of the crop. She gets his attention, and if you read this in Esther chapter 2, says that she pleased him and won his favor, which you don't have to have a vivid imagination to be able to understand what's going on here. Xerxes loves what he sees, loves who she is, so he says, all right, let's give her the royal treatment. A little bit of a nip tuck, a little bit of retinol for the face, even though she's already young and pretty. We're going to give her every single thing. So she goes through, she wins the competition, gets to be named Queen of Persia. And not only that, but on her coronation, Xerxes sends out word that this is going to be an empire-wide party. Everybody is going to know about it. So she is celebrated. Everybody sees her, loves her. Wow, look at the new queen. We all love it. And if you think that's a big deal, when we have Charles, over in England, this is something that's like 10 times that, because this is their country. And when the king says jump, you don't say how high, you say how high as you're already in the air, right? Like, you just do what the king says. So there's Esther. There's also this guy named Mordecai. Mordecai is Esther's adopted dad, kind of an uncle figure. And he's the guy that kind of in this ominous way says, hey, Esther, you got it going on. It's incredible that you have reached such heights, but you might want to keep quiet who you are and where you're from, because she's Jewish. Mordecai's Jewish as well. They're living in exile in Persia. And at the time, you don't really know all the reasons behind it, but you're going to see pretty quick today why he had that kind of a foresight to, hey, stay quiet about this whole thing. Mordecai, he's a little bit older, and he's hanging out by the town gate. As he's there, he hears a couple of soldiers just not having a good time. They don't like their job. It's kind of boring. Also, the king, he's an idiot. And one guy's like, you think the king's an idiot too? Yeah, Xerxes, he's a dum-dum. Oh yeah, well I think Xerxes is totally stupid. Well, I think Xerxes is evil. You know what we should do? Yeah, I know we should kill him. So they make a plan to kill the king. And Mordecai is right there listening to them go back and forth, and he's like, hold on, domestic terrorism here. I'm going to go over to Esther and say, hey, I heard this. So he goes and he reports it to the queen, his kind of adopted daughter, and she's like, oh gosh, yeah, no, we got to do something about that. So she and Mordecai says, when you go and you tell Xerxes this news, I want you to make sure that you drop my name in there, would you? I want Xerxes to know my name, which is kind of a cool thing. If there's somebody famous that you get to interact with, it's not that you base your identity in that kind of stuff, but it's kind of cool to know that like the president has said your name or knows you get the picture with that athlete or whatever it may be. And so he said, just make sure he knows my name, Mordecai. So Esther goes to Xerxes and tells him what she had heard, the reports. Xerxes sends his guy out. They investigate. Sure enough, they get the two guys right there. They're guilty, and they get impaled, which is brutal. Take their body, shove them down on a big pole. Not a pleasant experience. So, from Xerxes' perspective, this guy Mordecai, he's like, well, that's a good thing. Mordecai was there, kind of had my back. Mordecai's a good guy. Or at least it's just in a small, tiny way planted that there's somebody out there that has his back. Meanwhile, there's another character. His name is Haman. Haman the Agagite. Agagite. Which is a name that's like German just sounds angry to me. I'm sure for those of you that know German, you're like, no, it's a beautiful romantic. My brother, fluent in German, is like, he doesn't understand little plebes like me who think that everybody that's German is always ticked off all the time. So I hear that name, Agagite, and I just think, Agagite. That's how there's no other way of saying it. There's no gentle way of saying, oh, you seem like one of those Agagites. Like it just shocks you, right? So Haman, the Agagite, is this ambitious dude who's totally separate from, Mordecai and Esther and Xerxes, but he's ambitious as heck. He's climbing the ladder in Persia, and he is power hungry. He wants to be respected every turn of the way. I suspect even that he sees Xerxes on the throne and thinks, I could be next. That could be me. His heart, his mind kind of just goes there. And he lives in that world of, I am somebody. And because I am somebody, you must bow down and respect me. So Haman gets a promotion because that's just kind of how he has lived his life. He gets promotions. He doesn't care who he has to step over or step on to get it, but he does it. And so he gets the most recent promotion. And here's what happens. Xerxes himself gives it to him. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman. For the king had commanded this concern. Xerxes himself said, you should honor Haman. Haman's feeling pretty good. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor because Mordecai's a man of principle. He sees Haman for who he is. He's not going to do that. So, of course, somebody like Haman, you think, yeah, he's probably filled with grace. He's going to be like, I get it, Mordecai. I'll win you over with my winsome attitude. No, here's what Haman did. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down to or pay him honor, he was enraged. You could see that coming a mile away, right? It gets bigger than this, though. Haman the Agagite is actually a descendant of the Amalekites. So this is happening sometime in, let's say, like the 4th century BC. So this is about 5, maybe 600 years before King Saul, if you know the Old Testament. 1 Samuel chapter 15, God tells Saul, or at least Saul kind of takes it this way, that he's supposed to wipe out and kill all of the Amalekites. And in doing so, you're going to cleanse the land and this, that, the other. This is happening like 500 or 600 years before the story of Esther, okay? So Saul promptly goes out and does exactly the opposite of what God says to do. He does not do what God asked him to do. Amalekites continue to live on as a result. So Haman is actually a descendant of the Amalekites, and interestingly, Mordecai's lineage is given just a little bit earlier. You know those Old Testament names that when you're reading the Bible, you're like, skip, 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 right? It happens. I get it. I don't blame you. They also mean something. Mordecai's lineage is straight from King Saul. So we're not just talking about two guys that got beef with each other. And the authors, the writers of this story are very much setting this up to be pointing back at 1 Samuel chapter 15. And again, this is why it's worthwhile to dip into some of the study of, I wonder why this, or I wonder why that name, or something like that. Because this is not just a story of two guys that have beef with each other. Rather, this is a story of an ancient rivalry, centuries in the making. And now, instead of seeing Saul fulfill it there, we're going to flip it around and see what happens. Not when Saul is in power over the Amalekites, but now when the Amalekite, in this case Haman the Agagite, has power over his people. Because here's what happens when Haman the Agagite finds out who Mordecai's people were. Verse 6, having learned who Mordecai's people were, realizing that Mordecai's people are his people's ancient enemies, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Oh, no. I don't want to just get rid of that guy. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. So he goes and tells Xerxes himself about the Jewish people living in Persia. He says, they not like us, they not like us, they not like us, which is what Kendrick Lamar was quoting in his very popular song last year. I'm pretty sure, I don't know, you'll have to find him and ask him if he reads Esther a lot. But here's what he says. Their customs are different from those of all other people. They do not obey the king's laws. It is not the king's best interest to tell, I'm just looking out for your best interest here, Xerxes. You can see he's a sly dog. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. I will give 10,000 talents. That's roughly $400 million. Just a tidy bribe. 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administration for the royal treasury. And Xerxes sees this. He's not in need of money. He's got plenty. So he thinks, Haman, you're a man of integrity. I trust you. Keep your money. Take my seal. Do what you will. So sure enough, an edict goes out to the entire land. Kill all the Jews. The men, the women, and the children. If you're a Persian, ethnically Persian in the kingdom, you hear this, and I'm going to guess the vast majority of people are thinking, whoa, hold on. That's not, am I expected to do this? Of course, there's probably a subset of people, a small group that feel like Haman. They're like, yeah, can't wait. I got the guns, I got everything, got the weapons, I got my brand new katana. We're going to town on all the Jewish people. We're going to take them out. And here's the deal. They actually set a date. The date would be somewhere around like mid-February, February 13th, let's just say. They pick a date and they say, it's going to be on this date, so everybody get ready. The purge is going to happen. Now, if you're Jewish and that comes out, what do you think goes through your mind? You got your family, you got your kids, maybe you're living with generations, your parents, your grandparents, your kids, maybe even your grandkids, I don't know. Everybody's around and you think, I've lived here for 100 years, 200, 300 years, and now I have to go. And I can't just pack up my stuff and leave because I don't know if somebody's going to be blocking the gate. So I'm going to have to sneak out of here if I'm going to get anywhere. So you can imagine the kingdom gets a little chaotic. People don't know what to do. They don't know what's going to happen next. And there's certainly a lot of uncertainty. So amidst all this, Haman and Xerxes sit on the balcony, pour themselves a drink, and watch the sunset over the city, proud of where they're leading this empire. Things have gotten bad. Entire chapter 3 of Esther isn't named either because it's all setting up this Mordecai and Haman kind of intersection here. So she's completely absent, but she is the freshly minted queen of Persia. So she has some role to play in this whole thing. Mordecai and all the Jewish people are losing their minds, as you probably would too if an edict came out targeting you and everyone like you here. And so they're putting on sackcloth and ashes, and they're weeping and they're wailing. Meanwhile, Esther is in her ivory tower, almost literally. And she doesn't have a smartphone with a news app, breaking news edict going out. Everybody's going to die. There's no daily podcast that she's listening to get the latest updates about one thing or another. She just lives in her own nice, tidy, pretty world, undisturbed. She's not bothered by somebody. She's Xerxes' wife. Just leave her alone. So she gets news, though, from Mordecai of what's going on. And Mordecai cites his sources. He actually sends the exact wording of the edict to her. And he can't talk to her personally because she's out there and he's just this lowly person. So he tells the messenger, he says, please make sure that she understands the severity of this. This is worst case scenario, okay? So the messenger shows up to deliver the message to Esther. And her reaction is probably something you aren't anticipating. Upon learning all this, she says, all the king's officials and the people, and you imagine kind of her saying this to Mordecai, and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, like you want me to go to the king unsummoned? The king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. So sorry, Mordecai. My hands are tied with red tape, and I haven't been having a lot of conversations with him in the first place. So I can't really do much. I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but that kind of ticks me off as a response. Like, aren't you supposed to be the hero of this story, Esther? Don't you imagine that heroes are the people who the moment danger comes, they jump into it? I love Superman. I love the Superman trailers for the new movie. The trailer of him jumping in front of this explosion and protecting this little girl. You're like, yes, that's what a hero does. And here's Esther, who sees the explosion happening in slow motion and sees the little girl standing right in front of it. And she's like, yeah, that really sucks for her. Like, that's rough. Kind of ticks me off because the book is named after her, and that's her response. And Mordecai feels very similarly, which is why he pulls out his trump card. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: do not think for a moment that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. This edict applies to you as well. And if you think you can just hide your ethnicity, good luck. I have a feeling it's going to come out at some point in time here. Your neck is on the line, and that makes her eyes go wide. She realizes he's right. Her neck is on the line. She does not have the benefit of sitting back and watching something play out now, because she knows what will happen if she doesn't take action. So Haman puts his crosshairs on Mordecai, and then he gets a big smile because he's like, I'm so high up, I don't just put my crosshairs on him, I'm going to put my crosshairs on all his people. Watch me. But what he doesn't realize is that in doing so, he puts his crosshairs on Xerxes' wife. Mordecai continues, says, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. He is convinced that no matter what she does, God's going to figure it out and save his people. Some notion of providence. But you and your father's family, I'll tell you what, you'll perish. And who knows? Who knows? But that you've come to your royal position for such a time as this. This is the moment when the weight of everything Esther has experienced up to this point, from the crown to the privilege to the title, all of it collides with the reality and the fear that she could lose not just that, but her very self. And it's in that moment that she looks at her life and what's happening, and she learns that this whole thing is not about her comfort. It's easy to think that, right? Like when you're winning and when things are going well, it's easy to think it's because I'm good, it's because I'm supposed to be comfortable. But now she realizes that she has been put there not for comfort, but for courage. And so Haman just posits that question. Who knows? It's a good line. Who knows what God can do with this? There's this notion of providence. I get really annoyed by it. I've read some of the founding fathers, of America. One of the things I get really annoyed with George Washington is not his hair. That's gorgeous, by the way. Not his wooden teeth or whatever he had there. But there's this thing that he would always talk about. He talked about providence, George Washington would. And he would talk about it in the sense, I'm not sure if he believed in a Christian God or whatever, but providence was God for him. Which is really easy to say when you're kicking British butts and winning elections, right? Like, it's not hard to claim God's providence when you have a financial windfall or your team wins the World Series, go Cubs. Like, we know that when things go well, it's good. But not many people claim God's providence when they overdraft on their bank account. Not many people claim God's providential work when their kid leaves their house for years and doesn't want to talk to them. When times get tough, we don't want to say, well, God's doing this. And then that's a tricky thing about providence, at least in a strict controlling form. It's this idea that God has done every single thing so that, the only answer is exactly what we're experiencing right now, which unfortunately also means that God does what we would call evil. Either that or evil doesn't exist. And my conviction, just through understanding Jesus and what Jesus reveals to us about God, is that that's not what God's like. God does not inflict evil on anyone ever. Never has, never will. That's not who God is and what God's like. So then you get to this notion of providence, and you ask, well, what do we do with that? Because does that mean God's not in control? No. Okay, then how do we understand what happens even in our own lives? Have you ever had one of these moments in your life where you're not sure what God did or did not do, but you look back and you say, I can't explain almost all of this whole situation over here outside of God had to be up to something. Like there's something that was happening over there. That the only way to make sense of it is that God helped to orchestrate all of it. And especially if you've been a Christian for a while, I'm going to guess that there's probably a few of these moments in your life where you look back and you say, I did not know it at the time, but man, I'm so grateful. And when we look at the story of Esther, of course, God's not mentioned. But what we know is that there's some things happening here, aren't there? And we can try to explain it, oh, well, she's just pretty, or, oh, well, this, that, the other. Yeah, I get it. And you're not wrong. But there's something else happening. And that something else that's happening might make it feel like God isn't there. Because we don't have God saying, and then here's what I did, and then here's what I did, and here's the golden path that will take us all the way to victory. No. You're left to figure it out. And that's hard. And especially the longer you're a Christian, the more we each have to mature in our own faith to trust that, oh, okay. Who knows? Who knows what I'm facing today if this actually could be used for good? Who knows? Who knows if what you walked in here with, the weight that you're carrying, the pain, the shame that you have, if God might have a plan for that. For the uncertainty you're feeling, you don't know what you're going to do next month. Heck, you might not know what you're doing next week. And there's that anxiety that just kind of weighs on you. And you're having trouble sleeping. Who knows? Who knows? I'm not saying it's good. But who knows what God might be doing in your situation? Who knows if you becoming the person that you've always dreamt of being, the person that God created and wants to see mature and grow and thrive into your own, is out there, but it's not because you avoided all of the uncertainty. Rather, it's because you stayed faithful through it. And you might get glimpses. You might get a glimpse of, I think I see what God's doing right there. And that's great. Your eyes begin to open up to these things, right? If you're like me, most often, you have to kind of get through it and then look back and say, oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming. And we get grateful as we reflect. Who knows what God has in store for you on the other side of courage? Because it takes courage to walk into a situation that you don't have any control over, that you are frustrated with, and that isn't going well for you, but to say, I will still hold my faith. I will still duke this out, and I will patiently look for God to redeem this situation. Who knows? You don't. I don't. We don't always know. And that's how God designed it, so that we could learn and grow to be faithful. So, Mordecai sends this message to Esther, and Esther is wrecked. Perhaps all of these things, all this stuff has happened so that you could be active in this moment and do something for us right here, right now. And this is the moment that our hero steps up, finally. This is the transition. She looks at her servants, and she said, and the messenger, she says, go back to Mordecai and tell him to pray for me. 3 days fast for me. Servants, all of you who have helped me become who I am right now, you pray and fast for me, because I have to do something. And I do not know if I'm going to survive it. In fact, here's where she turns that corner. She says, if I die, I die. That's big. That's a moment. If this whole situation is you have Xerxes and Haman and Mordecai and Esther is a game of chess, then Mordecai is playing chess, and he has a queen on his side. And if you know anything about chess, when the queen is on the move, you better look out. Mordecai is playing Candyland. Mordecai is playing chess. Haman is playing Candyland. And what happens next is absolutely incredible. But that's for next week. This week, we reflect on the situations you find yourself in. What is God doing? What kind of things, when we sit and we reflect, during communion time, during prayer, what is the weight that you carried in here? And is there a courageous moment, a courageous decision that is waiting for you to be made so that you can trust that on the other side of it, there might not be more money, there might not be a promotion, there might not be the things that so many people celebrate, but perhaps on the other side of that is faithfulness, and God has something greater than anything you can imagine in store for you. What does that look like for you? What does a courageous decision look like for you today? So as you step into that uncertainty, because trust me, if you want certainty, you're in the wrong place. But if you want faith that will transform your life, faith that is real enough to meet you in the mess of life, then the book of Esther is great. Welcome to church. Because that's what we desire, faith that can handle this kind of stuff. As you go on into your week and you face the inevitable uncertainties of us all, I want you to be asking that question. What lies on the other side of a courageous decision today? So as you go from here, Lord, bless you and keep you. Lord, make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace. Love you guys. Have a great week.